$12.5 billion. That was the price paid in 2014 for one of Canada's most recognizable brands. At the time, it was celebrated as the largest restaurant acquisition in Canadian history. But within just a few years, something changed. Market share began to fall. Customer complaints increased. The smell of fresh baking that once defined every location quietly disappeared. Many longtime customers started asking the same question. Did this deal save Tim Hortons? Or did it begin its decline? What happens when a national icon becomes part of a global investment strategy? Tonight, we examine how one corporate transaction reshaped a company that once held nearly 75% of Canada's coffee market, and why some believe the $12.5 billion deal marked the beginning of the end. Tim Hortons began in 1964 in Hamilton, Ontario, founded by Tim Horton, a respected player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Partnering with businessman Ron Joyce, the small coffee and donut shop grew steadily. The formula was simple: fresh donuts made at 4 a.m., affordable coffee, and a welcoming place for the community. By 1976, Timbits were introduced. In 1986, the Roll Up the Rim campaign became a national ritual. By the early 2000s, the phrase double-double was part of the Canadian vocabulary. Tim Hortons was more than a coffee shop. It was what sociologists call a third place, not home, not work, but somewhere in between. By 2003, it had over 3,000 locations and controlled roughly 70% of Canada's brewed coffee market. The first major shift began years before the $12.5 billion deal. In 1995, Tim Hortons was acquired by Wendy's for approximately $425 million. For several years, operations appeared unchanged. But in the early 2000s, executives introduced an operational efficiency initiative. Instead of baking fresh donuts in every store, the company adopted par baking. Products were partially baked in centralized factories, frozen, shipped to stores, and reheated. The change improved profit margins significantly. However, freezing and reheating altered the texture and aroma. The familiar scent of fresh frying dough faded. Bakers were replaced with staff trained to reheat and assemble. The slogan, "Always Fresh," remained, but its meaning quietly shifted. While customers remained loyal, many later said this was the moment authenticity began to weaken. In 2014, 3G Capital partnered with Burger King to purchase Tim Hortons for $12.5 billion. The merger formed Restaurant Brands International. 3G Capital was known globally for aggressive cost control strategies. Investors praised the move as financially strategic. The goal was clear: streamline operations, reduce costs, and increase shareholder returns. Soon after the acquisition, several changes followed. Coffee sourcing shifted. Supply chains were adjusted. Cost management tightened. While these moves improved operational efficiency, critics argued that something intangible was being lost. When a community-driven brand becomes part of a multinational holding company, priorities can shift from tradition to performance metrics. For many customers, this takeover marked a clear dividing line between the old Tim Hortons and the new one. Following the acquisition, Tim Hortons made a significant supplier change. Meanwhile, McDonald's Canada expanded its McCafe offerings aggressively. Consumers began comparing coffee quality. Some surveys indicated that customers perceived McDonald's coffee as stronger and smoother. Market share in Canada's hot beverage category began declining from historic highs, near 75% toward the low 50s over several years. At the same time, Tim Hortons expanded its menu rapidly. Breakfast sandwiches, wraps, loaded bowls, and even flatbread pizza. Operational complexity increased. Employees managed multiple appliances simultaneously, slowing service times. Customers grew confused about brand identity. Was Tim Hortons still a simple coffee and donut shop, or was it attempting to compete with full-scale fast food chains? Brand clarity, once its strength, became blurred. In January 2018, Ontario increased minimum wage from $11.60 to $14 per hour, a 20% jump. Franchise owners reported that Restaurant Brands International did not immediately approve menu price increases to offset labor costs. Some franchise locations responded by reducing paid breaks, adjusting benefits, and cutting employee perks. News reports circulated widely, and public reaction was swift. Protests were organized across Ontario. Social media campaigns, including calls to boycott, gained traction. Political leaders publicly criticized the situation. For a company long associated with community warmth, the controversy damaged public perception. Corporate reputation rankings fell sharply that year. What had once been viewed as a symbol of Canadian pride was now facing national criticism over labor practices and corporate decisions. Data began reflecting the shift in public sentiment. Market share in the broader caffeinated beverage segment declined steadily between 2014 and 2021. Customer satisfaction surveys showed weakening performance compared to competitors like McDonald's and Starbucks. In corporate reputation rankings, Tim Hortons fell dramatically within a single year, losing dozens of positions. Same-store sales growth slowed, and in some quarters turned negative. Franchisee groups publicly expressed concerns about profitability and operational direction. While the company remained highly profitable overall, the dominance it once held in Canada was no longer absolute. Competitors expanded rapidly, capitalizing on consumer dissatisfaction. The numbers did not suggest total collapse, but they did confirm erosion, a gradual loss of market leadership that had once seemed untouchable. In response, Tim Hortons launched several recovery efforts. Nostalgia-driven advertising emphasized heritage and community. A loyalty program, Tim Rewards, was introduced to encourage repeat visits. The traditional roll-up-the-rim promotion was digitized through a mobile app. Menu adjustments aimed to simplify operations. While these initiatives attracted attention, many customers remained skeptical. Brand trust, once weakened, is difficult to restore quickly. The core issue was not a single product or promotion. It was perception. When authenticity feels compromised, marketing alone cannot fully repair it. Today, Tim Hortons remains a major player with thousands of locations and billions in annual revenue. But the debate continues. Did the $12.5 billion deal strengthen the business financially while weakening its identity culturally? The story of Tim Hortons is not simply about donuts or coffee. It is about what happens when a local institution becomes part of a global capital strategy. Efficiency can improve margins, expansion can increase scale, but heritage brands rely on emotional connection. When that connection shifts, customers notice. The $12.5 billion acquisition did not erase Tim Hortons from Canada's landscape. Stores still operate in every province, yet many longtime customers say it feels different from the way it once did. The lesson may be broader than one company. Authenticity, community, and trust are difficult to measure on a balance sheet, but they may be the most valuable assets a brand possesses. And once those assets weaken, rebuilding them can take far longer than closing a deal.